Assalamu alaikum and peace. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and you're watching Muslim Network TV. Muslim Network TV is always there on Galaxy 19 satellite 24/7, and you can download our app if you like, Muslim Network TV. And we are on Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and of course our own website. But if you're one of the people who always get everything from YouTube, you will find our channel there. Don't forget to subscribe. America is still going through in the aftermath of January 6th, and probably it's going to stay with us in FEMI for a long period of time. But just imagine if there was a single Muslim who has done that, attacking there or knocking a door or breaking a window, how that will be covered in America. Immediately, it will be called terrorism. Guy probably will be shot, no questions asked, and nobody will investigate. And then people will be getting into the Quran and Islam and Middle East and all of those stuff. But here is thousands of people storming. And since they were Christians and white mostly, media coverage is, shall I call it, quote unquote, thoughtful. That's how, I have the complete breakdown of about 2,252 articles on January 6th. And that's how it went. 19% used the term like coup, insurrection, riot, and mob. 19%. And that's where as they went. 38% was even more polite, calling it protest, a demonstration. The rest of the 42% were unsure. They mixed between mob and coup and riot and demonstration and protest. So they haven't made up any mind. But one thing which is clear about all of that, none of them called it an act of terrorism on January 6th. Some even dared to compare it with the Arab Spring, as though Arab Spring were some people who were just frustrated because of some conspiracy theories. They were attacking their parliament and all that. Arab Spring was a very positive expression for freedom, liberty, and justice. It was not a mob. That was very problematic, but that unfortunately is what media does because of their ignorance or their set track of portraying Muslims and seeing the negative aspects of things. News coverage of Muslim in the US for more, it has been mostly negative, even for minorities. For example, media portrayal of minorities project lab at Vermont College, Middlebury College, analyzed 26,626 articles in 2018. That's not in Fox. We're talking about New York Times, Washington Post. They discovered that 92% of all articles about Muslim were problematic, negative, referring to something foreign. And as compared to other minorities, Jews, mostly positive, African American, most of the time positive, but not for Muslim. Another study which actually went through 800,000 articles over a period of several years. It came out a year before the earlier one. And they also concluded 78% of articles mentioning Muslim and Islam have negative tones. So some actually, while describing January 6th, CNN, I think on third or fourth day, say their bosses have allowed them to use term terrorism about it. On the other side, there were some who saying, oh, we caution you against using the term terrorism. Well, to discuss that with us is someone who is questioning that. Especially, she was part of Arab Spring, and she considered that comparison to what happened on January 6th to be utterly wrong. Her name is Hadeil Ali. Welcome to Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you so much for having me, Imam Mujahid. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Hadeil Ali is a manager for diversity, equity, and inclusion at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, more known as CSIS. I had the honor of attending a couple of their task forces, I think. She's an Egyptian American and a former researcher at the Georgetown University. So, Hadeil, what prompted you to write that article?
Yeah, thank you, Imam Mujahid, again. And I think I've had this interest for quite a while in looking at the media coverage and specifically the power that the media holds in our societies and how many of us rely on the media to get our daily information. And so as I was watching the coverage of the Capitol terrorist attack, as I call it in my article, I was extremely disappointed by the comparisons that were made to the Arab Spring. And that's why it urged me to highlight again the importance of words, labels, and symbols that media uses and how that impacts the average American's perceptions of different communities, including Muslim Americans in the US.
So when did you start noticing that how media covers Islam and Muslims? Has this been something which you have been observing for a while?
Yeah, definitely. Since my undergraduate years, I've written some papers and have had a lot of interest in looking at, you mentioned Imam Mujahid, some of the studies. I've looked at smaller studies, but looked at myself, the difference in coverage of terrorist attacks by Muslims versus the ones by white Americans, and looking at the differences of coverage and the words that have been used, and to the extent of the humanization at times of white Americans who are conducting some of these attacks. So this has been a long time interest of mine, and broadening even to another article of mine that I have written about Maggie Salah, which is Muhammad Salah's his wife, and looking also at some of the coverage of Muslim women in Western media.
So Muhammad Salah being the famous soccer player in UK.
Exactly. The famous soccer player in Liverpool, and noticing some of the rhetoric that came out in the West about his wife, and really wanting to highlight her story as a story of empowerment that typically in the US we don't see. A veiled, modest woman who is a story of empowerment, who is not only a mother, an Egyptian, who's a biotechnologist, who also has a role in charities and so on, who can be seen as a story of empowerment. And my goal here is to raise awareness of what empowerment means and to ensure that representation is accurate of our community.
But there is something common between Arab Spring in Cairo in Egypt and what happened in here, that both places people were protesting electoral process.
Yeah, you're right. In Egypt, it was a protest of 30 years plus of military dictatorship that has prevented many Egyptians from basic rights, dignity, and so on. But that is rooted in true experiences and lived experiences of millions of Egyptians, and that is completely different than what happened at the Capitol on January 6th, which was individuals who were seeking, violence, inciting violence, to be quite frank, at the encouragement of U.S. leadership who have been radicalized online, and who are spreading, fake news, false information, and wanting to overthrow the government. So I think those are, completely different situations. We want to be very careful about the way we label both instances and really understand the history behind those individuals going to Tahrir Square and fighting for their lives.
So Tahrir Square was the place where the largest demonstration in Egypt took place. So you addressed somebody in your article, Mr. Stelter. Your words are insensitive to those who took part in the Arab Spring. Those words are offensive and hurtful to millions of Egyptians, Tunisians, Syrians who took to the streets in 2011 to fight for bread, freedom, and social justice, unquote. Did you talk to Mr. Stelter, or you just wrote about it?
No, I just wrote about it. I thought it would be powerful to address him directly. I do hope that maybe himself or others at CNN and other news channels do have the opportunity to look at this. But I think the importance here is talking to individuals who are from those communities, who have been impacted by these policies, who know individuals that have been in Tahrir Square and other places, instead of talking on behalf of them. And that's why the media has this role of interviewing and hosting and giving a platform to individuals who have those experiences, instead of making assumptions. And that's the issue that we face, that lack of representation. And when we do see stories about these issues, it tends to be, like you highlighted, Imam Mujahid, at the beginning, stories of terrorist attacks and so on.
So you were yourself a part of Arab Spring. Am I correct to say that?
I did have the opportunity to be in Egypt during that time with my family.
And how do you compare people around you when you were there and their aspirations with the aspiration of people who are in Washington, D.C. on January 6th?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And we're gathered here today, and a couple of days ago was January 25th, which was the anniversary of the revolution. And it's important to, again, in the importance that I was highlighting earlier of words and symbols, using the words revolution, protesters. And I think there the aspiration, again, as I was mentioning, was, and you remember the slogan was, bread, freedom, and social justice. Women, men, children were seeking a better life for their children. They were seeking, basic dignity, freedom, rights, and so on, to be able to support their families economically, and so on, and really aspiring for a better Egypt, and really, caring for their country and wanting the best for it. And obviously knowing the repression and that happens in Egypt, that was the only way to really go out and share their views. And I want to highlight that it was done in a peaceful manner. There was reaction by the government that led to this to be more violent. But initially it was attempted to be a peaceful protest. I think this is very different than what we see in January 6th on TV, which are groups of white supremacists, some, and that wanted to overthrow the government because of conspiracy theories, because of online radicalization, because of also leadership in the US that incited them and pushed them and gave them this sort of empowerment and privilege to think that they would be protected by breaking in to one of the most protected buildings in the world. And so that's where I see the difference between both events.
So maybe what happened at Lafayette Square when police and army and military was attacking and mobbing people who were peacefully there, that probably is more close to the government reaction causing violence, not people resorting to violence, probably.
Yeah. You're definitely right. I think I've written another piece about kind of that comparison between Tahrir Square and Lafayette, and I want to acknowledge again the differences of political, social, and cultural context here. What I was trying to highlight is individuals who are fighting for a better country. The BLM protest is highlighting structural racism, systematic racism that exists in the US, and wanting to fight against this and police brutality. And obviously, the reaction that we've seen to these protests look very different than January 6th.
You're watching Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid. I'm talking with Hadeil Ali, and we'll be right back after these messages.
My wife, she's a professor at the University of Cincinnati, who's Catholic, and by her watching and listening to our 3-year-old son watch Adam's World, she ended up taking Kalima Shahada. She embraced Islam because she learned so much about Islam and the other prophets. It really affected our life in a great way, and because of Sound Vision and Adam's World, we're Muslims.
I took my Shahada 15 years ago, and I actually am from a rural part of Ohio. And so I found the catalog for Sound Vision, and I ordered the tapes and the CDs and the books, and I used those, and especially for my little daughter, that's how we basically learned our Islam, and Islam entered our hearts through the wonderful works of Sound Vision.
Okay, assalamu alaikum, brother. I just want you to know that I love the Sound Vision website, that a lot of times when I'm looking for information, especially as it relates to homelessness, domestic violence, and women issues, I go to that website, and then I see what you've written, and then I copy and paste it and spread the word, because the wisdom is there. So I can't do any better than what Sound Vision has already done.
Sound Vision is our survival guide. It is the organization that provides skills for Muslims how to survive and thrive in this community here in the US.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Anam, I'm in 11th grade, and I grew up with Adam's World, and what it taught me was unity, respect, and love for the Muslim Ummah.
Adam's World is the greatest show ever made. Take me to the Kaaba, man. I love that puppet.
Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid talking with Hadeil Ali. Tell me this, here the terms were used: protesters, rioters, mob, and very few calling it terrorist. But insurgency and, to define the whole thing, some are just calling it a protest and demonstration. What were the names which were being used in the Middle Eastern media or by people themselves who were in Tahrir Square? What were they calling? What were they doing?
Yeah, I think the danger of the events that happened on January 6th is how that can be utilized abroad, and in some cases in the Middle East, you see this being used, and the terms adequately used, rioters, insurrection, and really wanting a push for this to be called a terrorist attack. There's a certain perception around what terrorism is, right? And that is related to biases that we have, and biases that the media has in what it calls terrorism, and what it attributes as a terrorist attack. That's why I find it important to show that domestic terrorism can be conducted by white supremacist groups. This is not a term affiliated with a religion, with a race, with an ethnicity, but rather an act. However, we've seen in media time and time again that this is the term that gets overwhelmingly used for the Muslim American community. And you see, as you mentioned, Imam Mujahid, that usually the term gets attributed very quickly early on in the media, versus in some other cases, they'll wait for a few days until they have confirmation on what is the best term to use. So, that level of accuracy needs to be streamlined across all events or attacks that happen abroad or internationally.
So, were they calling Arab Spring in Egypt revolution, Thawra? What was the term they were using to self-describe?
They were using the term Thawra, like you mentioned, revolution. Again, this is my personal view. If you'd ask someone else, they might have another perspective. But in my personal opinion, it was a revolution. It was a Thawra. People are fighting for their lives, fighting for their country, hopeful for a better Egypt, one that is not shaped only by a military dictatorship. In the US, I think that term was used, and there was a lot of support for the revolution. But I think the other piece of it is, what does this mean for policy recommendations? What does this mean for the way that the West actually deals with the Muslim world? And that's what I find issue with. A lot of times you see that support in terms of the language that's being used, and that happened during the Obama administration, but very much different in terms of the take that the US has. And that's why I see that the Biden administration has a key role in addressing this issue.
Do you see over a period of time there is some improvement in how US media covers the issues in the Middle East, or it's the same thing?
I think, to be quite honest, I still see a lot of issues with the US coverage. I think there is a push with certain platforms to highlight Muslim Americans in key roles, in leadership roles. It's important for the average American, not only on the East Coast and West Coast, but living in the Midwest or in the South, to see Muslim Americans who are extremely accomplished, who are well educated, who are leaders in their communities on TV. We need to see more of that. And I think we have still a long way to go.
And probably revolution has a long way to go. What do you think of 10 years ago, people stood up, and people in America at that time, I felt, by and large, were positive about it. I don't know whether news was reaching Egypt or not. We have the Occupy Wall Street movement here, which also were concerned more about livelihood of people instead of freedom aspect of it, but it was taken in a positive way. So, what are your thoughts about the future of Arab Spring, which some people have described became a nightmare in a winter?
Yeah, I think you're right. At the wake of the events, there was overwhelming support from very different Western countries, and kind of this shock that, that Egyptians or Tunisians or so on would be able to take on such a task. But I think the issue is, 10 years later, and there are two sides to it, right? I think there's internally, in the case of Egypt, the power of the military dictatorship that is very hard to overcome, even if you remove a president, even if you remove Hosni Mubarak, the previous president. There's a structure, a very well-established structure that even after 10 years, it's very sad to say that very little has changed. And I think the other side of it is from the perspective of Western countries, although there was this push and this overwhelming positive support, as I was mentioning earlier, I don't think that necessarily translated into many policies that change narrative, that change the way we perceive the Muslim world or the Middle Eastern world. And again, that's why I'm really eager to see what the Biden administration can do and should do in relation to the Muslim world.
I asked this question to someone who worked for CIA on Muslim Network TV. He worked for CIA for, I think, 30 years or so, but a while ago. I asked him this question: do you think there has been any American administration which will prefer human rights and democracy in other countries over its national interest? He, without hesitating, he said, never. It has never happened.
Yeah.
Do you think, so if never happened, so do you think your hope with the Biden administration may be just misplaced hope?
No, I think 2020 was, I hope, a year of social awakening in the US and reckoning with the US's history. We've seen many companies, organizations, and institutions really wanting to reckon with its history and really wanting to push issues related to diversity, inclusion, structural racism, and highlighting underrepresented communities in the US. The reason why I'm hopeful about the Biden administration is because we've seen one of the most diverse cabinets ever in the US history. But I think this is also an opportunity to change the narrative with the Muslim world and not always have a narrative through a counterterrorism lens. I still see some lack of diversity in faith in the Biden nominees. So I really hope that in the next few months, we see the Biden-Harris administration addressing Muslim representation for greater diversity, but I think this is also more strategic for the US, both domestically and internationally.
So my question remains that what is the hope for Arab Spring? I mean, people still feel the way they felt. Do you think they will once again try to have their control of their lives through freedom, free demonstrations, and electoral politics, which is not controlled by military? Do you see that happening again?
I'm afraid to say that I don't have as much hope maybe in that case, that after 10 years, I think people have lost faith in this process. I think the moment, 2011 was really a moment that I think could have changed Egypt forever, changed the Middle East forever. And for several reasons, I think that unfortunately did not happen. I speak to a lot of Egyptian Americans outside of Egypt, in the US mostly, and feeling this sense of disappointment and really not seeing another 2011 moment that can happen again in the near future. Maybe in quite a few years, but I don't think that would be possible anytime soon, which is quite unfortunate to say.
Yeah, in general, when people were positive thinking and talking about Arab Spring, in think tanks which I was attending in those days, people were not happy about it. People were worried. So the idea that dictators and the kings are good for American interest is an idea which I think which continuously discourages America from taking a position which is positive towards other people. Well, Hadeil Ali, thank you so much for being with us. Hadeil Ali is a manager for diversity, equity, and inclusion at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. She's an Egyptian American and former researcher at the Georgetown University. Thank you so much, Hadeil Ali. And thank you, Sherdil Khan and Dr. Abdul Wahid for producing today's show. And thank you for watching. You're watching Muslim Network TV at Galaxy 19 satellite. We're 24/7 there. And also on Apple TV, Amazon, Fire TV, Roku. And you can download our app as well. Our website is muslimnetwork.tv. Peace. Salam.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Adam. You remember me? I appeared in so many episodes that Sound Vision has put on the market. No matter what. Hey, what's happening? Hey, oh, sorry. Lockdown is what it is. Well, continuing here. In this lockdown, Sound Vision never stops thinking about you, the viewer. We'll have to get back into production again, online and inline. Everybody in their own space, even me. Although I'm stuck with Lanisa.
Salam! Salam! Salam!
I know, you were shocked too. Well, let me continue. This is what I was going to say. Salam! 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 Cut! 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 Finally, I get my own screen time again. Thank God. And so we invested in new equipment to bring you even better production with new songs and new singers and animations. Well, here are a few clips. And Sound Vision has brought all this into your home, making Islamic values and teachings easy. And if you know me, Adam, a multi-talented actor, well, sometimes I'm an actor and the reporter and the... Oh, that's enough. Let's move on to the next section. Well, you can watch these new episodes on our new app at www.adamsworldapp.com. We have previews happening every day on Muslim Network TV. Sound Vision has been serving generations, moving and changing with the times. We are all faithfully connected. That is a huge blessing. Your donation helps keep these programs available now and into the future. We take this job of helping tomorrow's Muslims today seriously, and you should too. Today, we need your help. Children absorb and learn from everything they encounter. Make that wholesome, positive, grounded in our faith. Together, we can accomplish our goal of raising better Muslims, better neighbors, and better citizens. Please donate generously. It's an investment in our future. To finish, let me tell you, there are new scripts of my new mission. And it is something that I enjoy talking about. My new mission is space. Houston, we do not have a problem. Salam, see you soon. Me too.
Salam and peace. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and you're watching Muslim Network TV. Muslim Network TV is always there 24/7. We come through many means, through satellite, through OTT devices, through your phone or YouTube. You make a decision which one method you like. Satellite is Galaxy 19 satellite, covering the whole United States, Canada, and Mexico, coast to coast, north to south, east to west. Also on Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and you can download our app on iPhone or Android, or go through website muslimnetwork.tv. And if you are the one who always see things through YouTube, you can look for Muslim Network there, but make sure that you subscribe also, so we keep you informed about what's happening. January 6th was a while ago, 21 days ago, but it is still in the news. President Trump was impeached second time, and now is being tried. And people are talking about how people will deal with it and things of this nature. So far in conversation, we have a lot of experts about supremacist people, experts about violence, experts about democracy. But one type of experts we did not have, and that is an eyewitness. And the person today, not only an eyewitness, but he was a journalist, and he was present there on January 6th and January 7th, January 8th. That's his job. And that is Saqib Islam. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, Imam Mujahid. Thank you so much for having me, and of course talking about this very important topic that of course is not only being talked about in the US all over, but also all over the world.
Welcome to Muslim Network TV, and thank you for your time. Saqib Islam is multimedia journalist working for the Voice of America as a digital producer in Washington, D.C. So I heard you were there when all of that happened.
Yes, the day of January 6, 2021, just like 6 days into the new year, after a very, of course, bad year for all of us in 2020. We hope that it's going to be a good. But of course, what happened on that day, it just started out for me very regularly. It was a very cold and windy day, of course, but I was at the Capitol just to cover this rally that was supposed to happen there. And before that, of course, there was a rally by President Trump at the White House in Ellipse, and where the crowd was started gathering a couple of days in advance. Actually, I had seen activity developing within the Washington D.C. And of course, that day I was at the Capitol, and once President Trump finished his speech,
you did not attend President Trump's speech yourself.
No, I was at the Capitol all day since the morning. I was there around like 9 in the morning, and there was some crowd. There was like a few hundred people at the Capitol on the east side, where the attack happened when they broke the barricades and went upstairs into the lobbies of the Capitol building itself. So I was there all morning, and it was more or less peaceful rally. People were, chanting. Of course, they had some, worries about the election results, and they had some tensions, of course, regarding how the Congress is proceeding the certification of the elections that day. So of course, and then once President Trump's rally finished and he concluded his remarks at the White House, the crowd started to come over around 1 p.m. That's when we saw a huge number of people gathering right outside of the Capitol. And I was talking to people, actually. A lot of them were from all over the United States. They came from out of states just to register their protest on something that has been told to them, that election results were not correct. And they just wanted to be there and record their protest. But once these huge crowds started forming outside the Capitol building, I was I mean, it suddenly it became so violent. In that sense, what I'm saying, like people started like shouting, and then they broke the first layer of barricades, which was not very heavy. And then behind them there was metropolitan police, like about like 100 policemen on the stairs of the Capitol. And once I saw people running up the stairs and shouting, and kind of there was some scuffles between the policemen and the crowd. I just ran behind them and I went up to the stairs and tried to capture some videos and pictures of whole scene developing. But then I heard a big boom, like there was some kind of tear gas exploded, and then few minutes after that, around 2 p.m. Or right after 2 p.m., I heard a couple of gunshots. And that was the time when I ran back and kind of went away from the Capitol building, because things had escalated to a point where it wasn't safe. I was not equipped to be in that situation, because usually if we anticipate that the rallies or the events that we are covering are going to get violent, or there could be some kind of scuffles, then we have bulletproof jackets or helmets. But I was not wearing that day. So I ran back, and then I talked to people who were being pepper sprayed, people who were injured. I saw those scenes, and then all day things were just like people were going in and out of the Capitol like for next couple of hours, and there was so much noise, there was so much confusion, and it was just for me covering the Capitol building and the Washington DC for last 12-13 years. It was like a nightmare. Like I wouldn't have expected that it would happen at the Capitol building. So that's what I saw in front of my eyes, and I was just like, okay, this can't be real. So for me to get to accept this as a reality, it took me some time. But of course, as a journalist, I had to be there, and I stayed there until the evening when the curfew was in place, and people, all of the people were escorted out of the Capitol building. And then there were still a crowd of like about 100 or so people on one side of the Capitol, but they had cleared the building from east and west side, the main entrances of the Capitol building, and the curfew was very strict, and there was not a single human being around Capitol building and a single vehicle. It was just very eerie at that night, and I was just it was just impossible to see Washington DC so quiet on a January 6th night.
So, did you know beforehand that there might be some protest? Did you have any knowledge, or you were informed by Voice of America to be careful or something?
Of course, I mean, there were, of course, there was news that that President Trump is, putting together a rally in front of the White House, and of course, it will be all about the election results. And then there was online put together the right-wing media. And the people online had put together lots of resources that they are getting together at the Capitol building, and they will record their protest on the certification of the election results. So that day itself was very important. That was the day when the U.S. Congress was going to certify the results of the election of 2020 and certify President-elect Joe Biden as the new president of the United States, who was to be sworn in on January 20th. So basically, the day was important, and it had to happen. Something had to happen, and there were some warnings from the FBI, Homeland Security, about possible protests and violent protests. But of course, nobody had thought or anticipated or even imagined that this could escalate up to that level.
So you, as a news organization, and a reporter, you were not informed to be careful or avoid this or avoid that, but you had a general sense there's going to be protest.
Yes, of course. We were informed that, okay, be careful and it could get, violent. But given the history, because I had covered last year in 2020, if you remember, there was a huge gun rights rally in the capital of Virginia State in Richmond. And there were people with huge guns in their hands, and they were just walking around and they were protesting or kind of showing that they want their Second Amendment rights. They want to have their arms. And that was the rally which was really flagged as it could get really violent. And we were definitely, once all the journalists who were there, they were very much prepared for any kind of mishap, but it went very peacefully. And same thing, even today, if I tell you that the Department of Homeland Security has issued an advisory today that there could be some more protests and there could be some more peaceful or non-peaceful activity of First Amendment rights in Washington, D.C. and around the United States. And that's why we still have 7,000 National Guards staying in Washington, D.C. for the security. And the advisory is from now until 30th of April, that anything could happen, because now the Congress is getting ready to start the trial of President Trump for his impeachment. And that could also get, of course, the attention of the people who want to record their protests and come to Washington, D.C. and protest outside of Capitol building. So yeah, Capitol building is very much secured. Washington, D.C., of course, it looked like a fortress from January 6th all the way up to now. They just started taking off these barricades around the city, where we had 25,000 plus National Guards on top of Secret Service special event, on top of Metropolitan Police, on top of all these other security agencies who were securing this inauguration. But still, if you go to the city, and especially around Capitol, you would see a lot of activity, and FBI and Homeland Security have still instilled more advisories that anything could happen. So they are ready for it.
So, well, that's unfortunate. The case when they were supposed to be ready, they were not ready. Now in the post, this is the same thing. You know, everybody had an idea about somebody going to attack before 9/11, and it happened. And after that, we became extraordinarily cautious about that. So what were the slogans which you noted?
Of course, that day, most of the protest was about the election results. So everybody there was trying to kind of tell the people inside the Capitol. Of course, there was a joint session of the Congress and the Senate, and the certification of the election results. So they were trying to tell people inside that, okay, they think the elections were not fair.
So in record, it was, they were saying, stop the steal was one of the slogans.
Yes.
Do you remember any other slogans?
Trump won. And I mean, there were, of course, mostly it was all about election. And as the media, termed these people as pro-Trump protesters. So these were not Republicans. These were not some party or something. Mostly it was termed as pro-Trump protesters who stormed the Capitol. And that's what FBI and Homeland Security is investigating. Although President Biden on his inaugural speech termed the whole thing, what's going on, as a white supremacy or the domestic terrorism, but the Department of Justice and FBI and all the other security agencies are treating it as domestic extremism and domestic violent extremism, if you DVE as they term it. That this was one of those incidents, and it's being investigated as such. And up till now, if you see Imam Mujahid, 400 plus people have been arrested and charged, And
Well,
about
400 have been indicted, but about 140 has been arrested, right?
yes, I think 400 have been charged. Out of those, like about half, 150 plus, have been charged with criminal offenses or felony charges, which some of them could get up to 20 years in prison. That's according to Department of Justice. And of course, the Washington DC's prosecutor, Michael Sherwin, he also have been very vocal about this whole process, and he has been bringing it out to the public every day, that what's going on and how they are treating these people who stormed the Capitol, or of course in the U.S. Congress it is called insurrection, which is never before seen. The last one happened, of course, it was more than 200 years ago when Britishers.
Personally, you being a person of color, as a Muslim, did you feel safe in the crowd, or did anybody try to attack you or talk to you or push you around?
Once this whole thing escalated to a point where there were, of course, tear gas, there was gunshots, and there was so much chaos, that was the time when, of course, most of my fellow journalists and, of course, myself, we felt a little bit threatened. But overall, as I told you, that covering all kinds of rallies and different kind of protests in the United States, and it has been mostly been peaceful. But of course, what we saw in the summer, the Black Lives Matters rallies in Washington D.C. and around the United States have been very violent. So of course, after seeing that, we were back of our head, we were ready for it. But until people stormed inside the Capitol, things were very peaceful. People were actually demonstrating in some funny ways as well. They dressed up as Donald Trump, or they dressed up as some other political figures and just taking pictures with the people. Some people dressed up as Superman or some comic characters, and they were just protesting in a peaceful way. But I think when the big number of crowds arrived from White House to the Capitol, that's when things got out of control, and that's when I also started feeling kind of threatened. And although nobody said or did anything to me at that event, but subsequently, since I was going there every day, so the next day, there were no fences around the Capitol, and they were still cleaning up. And people were, while I was talking to people on the street, there were some drive-bys and who were shouting, "Fake news media, you are the real culprits, you are telling the lie." And we heard those things. And then
that was the second day of the riot.
I'm talking about 8th of January. 2 days later, there were still no fences. Everything was open in the Capitol. There was more security, of course. There were some number of National Guards present, but still there were people holding Trump flags. There were families coming out and still standing in front of the Supreme Court building. There's First Street between Supreme Court and Capitol building. They were protesting there. And that was the day when they started erecting this 7 feet tall fence around the Capitol. That was 8th of January. But still people were protesting, and that was the time when people had emotions really high. Some people were holding cell phones and going around and asking people, of course, I was being approached by a couple of people, and they were asking, why are you telling lie to people? Why are you selling this? Why are you selling this fraud election? You are the ones who are making it difficult. And of course, as a journalist, I cannot comment on that. I would just say I have no comments. Thank you very much. And these kind of incident did happen.
So how did they recognize you that you're a journalist?
Yeah, of course. Once you have a camera in your hand on a tripod, or of course, since the situation was such tense after this attack, that we had to be recognizable as journalists, because otherwise I mean, if you are a protester, of course, you should be able to differentiate between a protester and a journalist. Because what I had seen the 2 days before, I was very careful being recognized as a journalist by the authorities so that they know what I'm doing here. So subsequently, after every day when I was going to the Capitol after January 6th, as I said, as I told you that on 8th of January, they started erecting the fence. And then every day I would see increased number of National Guards. Every day their parameters would increase. And by 13th of January, when President Trump was impeached in the US House, we could easily walk up to the Capitol. There was a fence, but we were very close to the Capitol. And that was the day we had like 3 National Guard troops every 6 feet. There was like 3 to 4 National Guard, and it was all around the Capitol. And then after the impeachment day, they increased the parameter and they blocked a couple of blocks. And then by the inauguration day, everything around Capitol up to a few miles was closed for public, traffic, and anything. It was just like a fortress in Washington, D.C. It was just National Guard troops. Nobody else was allowed anywhere inside or around the Capitol, except the people who had for the tickets to go to inauguration, which was only 1,000, 1,500 maximum people, including the journalists and, of course, the staff at the Capitol and member of Congress. That's it.
So, so when did people, before the President Trump's speech at the White House, people you felt were very calm, but they were protesting? After that, it increased. And within an hour, the attack took place on the Capitol Hill. When attack took place, were there people outside who were still, having fun, taking photos in a normal way? Or was it clear that some of the people want to go in and create attack situation, and there are other people who are really don't want to do that? Resistance to entering the Capitol Hill, was it visible somehow? Were some people who were telling people, "Oh, don't go inside"?
Yes, of course. It was a very strange to witness this whole scenario, because, of course, when we go to the Capitol as a journalist, we have to show our IDs a couple of times. We have to go through metal detector that we don't have anything in our carry-on or bags or anything, or on ourselves. So yeah, it's a pretty strict protocol when we enter in the Capitol. And of course, the First Amendment rights are there. So I have seen people walking around in the Capitol protesting. During this whole impeachment trial of President Trump in 2020, exactly about 1 year ago, I have seen people protesting peacefully inside the Capitol, and they were approaching to the congressmen and senators and, recording their protest that they don't like what's happening. What happened that day, of course, the Metropolitan Police was there in a big number, but they were not ready for this kind of resistance and this kind of violence. As I told you, there were like small barricades about 4 feet high, and people were protesting behind it. As I said, there were like people were, dancing. There was some music going on. Of course, they were chanting for Trump or for the election result was fraud and all that. But there was nothing out of ordinary. We have seen this every time an election happens, and there was
the security situation now over there.
Sorry?
How is the security situation now?
Yes, so of course, as I told you, security is still very tight. As I said, Homeland Security has issued another security advisory today, which will be in effect until April 30th for any protest or domestic violent extremist activities, as they say in their advisory. So as there are like more than 7,000 National Guards still present in Washington, D.C., and they're securing Capitol building, White House, and a few other buildings where political activities are happening. Most of it is, of course, about the impeachment trial, which is going to go on, and all they are there to secure all these congressmen and senators and congresswomen who are going to be voting in this process. So their security is, of course, one of the priorities, and of course, keeping the peace in the city.
Thank you so much, Saqib al-Islam Sahab. And thank you for your time. And thank you, Hadeil Khan and Dr. Abdul Wahid, for producing today's show. And thank you for watching. Stay tuned for other programs on Muslim Network TV. We are 24/7 on Galaxy 19 satellite, Apple TV, Amazon TV, Fire, Roku, as well as on your own website, muslimnetwork.tv. Peace and salam.